And now we're ready to move on to the sentence. So here's the very quick definition of a sentence. What is a sentence? A sentence is two or more words connected together in a manner that conveys to the audience a complete benefit upon which silence is appropriate. Or you can say two or more words connected together with predication that involve a subject-predicate relationship, and a subject-predicate relationship is when the listener is completely satisfied. Is when you connect the two or more words together, and once you're done speaking, then you can become silent, and the listener will have understood a complete meaning that could be judged to be true or false, or the listener has understood a desire, okay, in the case of a question or a command, etc., etc. More on that later. Let's move forward. Every sentence has to have two parts. The first part will be the primary portion, and that in English we call it the subject, the topic of the sentence, the thing that's being talked about. And it has to be a noun or a pronoun. It needs to be an entity. The other part is the descriptive part. Now the descriptive part of every sentence could either be another noun. You can have two nouns. Zaid is a human. Or you can have an adjective. Zaid is tall. Zaid is knowledgeable. Or the second portion of the sentence could even be a verb. Zaid went. Or Zaid hit Amr. Or it could be a compound structure. It could be a full sentence. Or it could be a phrase like in the house. Zaid is in the house. Now in English the discussion stops here. Because regardless, this is really important, listen carefully, that in English, regardless of what kind of predicate you're dealing with, the noun, the subject will be at the front. At most, you'd have various types of predicates. You'd have a noun type predicate, you'd have an adjective forming the predicate, you'd have a compound structure, a full sentence occurring as the predicate, or a phrase occurring as the predicate, but it doesn't change the sentence fundamentally. Then the subject would be at the front regardless. In Arabic, there's a principle that calls for further discussion. Okay, and that is that in Arabic, when you choose to use a verb, okay, because you don't have to. Like there's many sentences that don't have verbs. Like the book is new. There's no verb in there, apart from the is. But the reason I'm saying there's no verb is because in Arabic we wouldn't have a word to correspond to the is. It would just be al-kitab and jadid together. Sentence is complete. No verb. Okay, but the minute you choose to bring a verb in Arabic, then the verb needs to be at the front, which causes the subject of the sentence to be delayed. Okay, and this would not happen in English, because if I use a verb in an English sentence, it would be Zaid went, or a longer sentence would be Zaid hit Amr, and hit Amr would be the predicate, went would be the predicate. In both examples, the noun Zaid is at the front, but in Arabic the verb would be at the front and Zaid would be delayed. You see a fundamental difference. And not only that, but when you have a verb and multiple isms, then in order to communicate, and in order for your listener to not get confused, you need to have some mechanism to be able to distinguish which of the nouns is the one doing the verb and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. And that mechanism is the process that was likened to human emotions and facial expressions in week 1. Okay, like the house example. The house fell down, I entered the house, door of the house. And we're going to give you more examples of that later as we move forward with today's presentation. Okay, so this is unique to Arabic, that it is possible in Arabic for a verb to precede its doer. Not only that, but actually the verb must precede its doer. Okay, so when you choose to use a verb, then the rule says verb at the front, and the doer of the verb will be delayed. Okay, so we're dealing with a subject and a predicate. Okay, a subject and a predicate, just like every sentence would have a subject and a predicate, but the format is different. That in a nominal sentence where there's no verb, the subject's first and the predicate second, but in a verbal sentence in Arabic the verb must be at the front. So this is a significant difference. It's unique. Okay, so this combined with the two unique issues, the fact that sequence does not determine grammar in Arabic, and when you have a verb and two nouns, you need to be able to tell which of the nouns is the one doing the verb and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. That's one issue. But in a nominal sentence that doesn't even need to have a verb, over there the problem will be of a different nature. It would be from where to where is the subject, where to where is the predicate, especially when you have a long sentence. So how is that done? In English it's done by is. Arabic doesn't have an is. So this is a problem that requires its own solution, which is not the human emotions and the facial expressions. It's not the grammatical states that solve this second problem. It's an entirely different problem, and it has its own solution. So when speaking about one issue and providing its solution, we want terminology that's specific to it. And when speaking about the second issue and providing its solution, we want terminology that's specific to it. So what the Arabic grammarians did is they took the generic terms, subject and predicate, and they gave more specific names. So when the subject and predicate appear in the sentence that begins with an ism, we're going to call it this and this. And when those two major components appear in a verbal sentence, we're going to call it this and this. So not only do we have the two terms, subject and predicate, but we have four more specific terms based on the kind of sentence you're dealing with. Okay, so since it's possible in Arabic for the verb to be at the front, this is going to create a verbal sentence. So we have a nominal sentence and a verbal sentence. Okay, so I just defined them for you. A nominal sentence is the sentence that essentially begins with an ism, and a verbal sentence is the sentence that begins with a verb, which in Arabic is possible. More accurately, it is what happens in the case of when you choose to use a verb, because you don't have to. Okay, we're going to move forward with this, inshallah. It's going to make more sense as we proceed. So here it is. So we have the generic terms, subject and predicate, which you can see on the far left side. Musnad ilayh. Musnad ilayh is the thing being talked about, and musnad is what you say about the musnad ilayh, the predicate. Now, depending on what kind of sentence the two appear in, they're going to be called something different. In a nominal sentence, the subject is called mubtada and the predicate is called khabar, and they appear in that order: subject first, predicate second. In a verbal sentence, the subject is called fa'il, which literally translates to doer of the verb, and the predicate is called fi'l, which literally translates to verb, and the order is switched, the verbs at the front. So the two halves of the nominal sentence are mubtada and khabar, and the two halves of the verbal sentence are fi'l and fa'il, and these are the four new terms. Okay, now let's see some examples. If you want to say Zayd went, in English the Zayd's at the front, the went second, but in Arabic it will be the other way around. Dhahaba Zaydun. Dhahaba Zaydun. And notice Zayd's particular ending is Zaydun, and that is because of the he, him, his. The he, him, his that we gave you in week 1. That Zayd is occurring in the state of Rafa. It is occurring as the subject of the verb dhahaba. On account of that, it has the particular ending Dhamma. Zaydun. Okay, so dhahaba is the predicate coming first. Zayd is the subject delayed. Subject is called fa'il and predicate is called fi'l. In the nominal sentence, the book is new. The word book is the subject of the sentence at the front, al-kitabu, and the adjective jadidun is describing the book, okay, and at the same time forming a complete sentence, and that means new. So the first half of the nominal sentence is called mubtada, and the second half is called khabar. Now, if you remember from the previous video, the one that talked about phrases, we spoke about how if you take a noun and an adjective and make them correspond fully, then that creates a phrase. You see, al-kitabul jadidu would mean the new book. Here we have a mismatch in the sense that al-kitab has al, whereas jadid doesn't have al. You see, so in order to create description at the phrase level, you have to satisfy the requirements that were discussed there. In other words, the complete total correspondence. So if you miss out on that correspondence, then you end up with something which is either invalid or something which is something else. In other words, another structure in the language, another sanction method in the language. So this is a sanction method. When you take the two isms and you format them in this way, where the gender is the same, the plurality is the same, the definite, indefinite value is different. Al-kitab is definite, whereas jadid is indefinite, then this gives you sentence level relationship. Now, how about if you take kitab and make that kitab, and the other one you make al-jadid, then is that okay? I would say that that's invalid. So it becomes meaningless. Okay, it falls under the hypothetical arrangements of words which are not sanctioned by the language. You see? So grammar is the science of classical Arabic that teaches you the sanction methods. Okay, grammar, Nahu is the science of classical Arabic that teaches you how to connect the three parts of speech in ways that are sanctioned by the language in order to create phrases and sentences. So I just gave you a working definition for grammar, which until this point I've been delaying. Okay, so you might want to write that down. You rewind the video, listen to it again, write that down, and that's only half of it because there's more to it, which we'll give you the entire complete definition in week 3, inshallah. Let's continue. Okay, so in a verbal sentence, the thing you need to understand, the most important aspect of a verbal sentence is that the doer of the verb must follow the verb. Okay, so dhahaba Zaydun, Zayd went. And in a nominal sentence, first of all, you don't have to have a verb in a nominal sentence. Like it could just be two isms, and more specifically two nouns, what the English people would call nouns. Zaid is a human. Or it could be a noun and an adjective, like the book example that we gave on the previous slide. Al-kitabu jadidun. There's no verb in either of those two examples. Or you can have a verb coming later in a nominal sentence, but then that would be advanced. And we're going to speak about that on the next slide. So let's look at the basic example of a nominal sentence. Al-kitabu jadid. The book is new. So al-kitab is what we call the mubtada, and jadid is what we call the khabar. So you have to be able to distinguish it from the phrase level structure, but then apart from that, it's pretty obvious which part of it's the subject, which part of it's the predicate. There's no issue yet. Okay, when it gets longer, then there's the issue, which we'll speak about as we move forward with the presentation. Okay, now here's the third type of format where the noun is followed by a verb. So first of all, based on the principle I just gave you, that the subject, the doer of a verb, must follow the verb, automatically that rules out the noun at the front being fa'il. Okay, so how do we label it?